Hello, welcome back to the FleeceFolk Diary. My name is Azra and you can find me on Instagram and Ravelry as the Duchess of Sussex. The last time we spoke, which was a while ago, I apologize for the absence, but we were in Western Australia and I did a whole episode on everything I bought at Bilby Yarns in Perth, and I was speaking to you from Margaret River, which is a bit further south from Perth, which is the wine region. So after leaving Perth, we road tripped across the southern end of Australia, across what's known as the Great Australian Bight, BIGHT Bight, to South Australia, and we made our way to Adelaide. I'm a little out of practice, but that's okay. And I just thought to sort of get back into the rhythm of things, I would share one finished object, talk through a few knitting whips at the moment. I am trying to clear my needles in preparation for MCAL season and other cows I may be dabbling in, sort of half-heartedly, but also a few acquisitions. We did a really good job scouting out yarn stores in Perth. I think I included a lot of that footage in the last video, but in Adelaide we managed one yarn store, and I'll share a bit about that and the yarn that I bought from there later on in the video. So in the thumbnail of the last video, I was holding a whip of this sock that I have since finished, and I love these colors. These are absolutely, if I could knit with one palette for the rest of my life, it would probably be this. This is yarn from New Zealand. It's Kiwi yarn. This is from Mrs. Peacock Yarns. Mrs. Peacock Yarns has a really great color palette that is very, and it's very much in my color house. And this one is called Autumn in April, and I have about this much left. So I know I always talk about not being able to use up a full 100 grams of a sock skein. I'm pretty happy with this kind of leftover. This is self-striping, so if you have any ideas for what leftovers of self-striping yarn can become, please do keep that, make a note of it in the comments if you can. I suppose it could become a cuff or the leg portion of a sock for interest, and then have a plain foot. I'm not sure, but that's how much I have left. I think I spoke 2 episodes ago about how I wanted a ribbed sock, but I wanted it in 3x1 rib, and so when I wore the sock, I didn't want it to be fully stretched out. I wanted it to sort of just show a bit of corrugation. So I cast on, this was based on the basic sock with integrated heel by Albina McLaughlin. That sock pattern is soon becoming my staple because I think, I've spoken about this before, I think it handles a self-striping heel really well. These socks are sisters, they're not twins, but I'm not too fussed about that. I just think that the sock pattern makes use of the self-striping quite well, in that it's not very obvious in the front when you wear it on your foot where you've lost the striping. So it's really faint here where you've lost the fatness of that stripe, because some of it is taken up by the heel and the heel turn. And I cast on, I usually do a plain sock with 60 to 64 stitches on 2.5mm needles. And this was both an experiment in ribbing where I cast on 72 stitches because I wanted to account for not much stretching, and I wanted to account for the schwumping, the gathering of a 3x1 rib, or any rib really. I could have gotten away with less, so I think if I do this again I can get away with 68 stitches, but 72 still fits. So I kind of like how flexible that is. I guess that's just the beauty of rib. It kind of, I keep saying schwump, but what I really mean is sort of like a cinch, gathering, I'm losing words. I've been on vacation for too long. anyway, snap out of it very quickly. So the entire leg of it, including the cuff, is 3x1 rib. And then when I got to the foot, the underside of the foot is in plain stockinette, and the top of the foot, it maintains that 3x1 rib throughout. Really happy with this. I knit this across the Nullarbor, so every time we would, we drove across the Nullarbor over a few days. So every time we got back to our accommodation, I would just knit on the sock while we play games or watch TV, etc., and recuperated for the night. And that's pretty good because I can turn around a sock pretty quickly, but the fact that it took me the whole sort of 10 days or 2 weeks means that I had a good time, which means that I did not have enough time to knit. You'll see that's a recurring theme. I got to the end of one sock and I was carrying only hand luggage, so I didn't pack any scissors or anything like that. And when I got to my first toe, I was at an accommodation that did not, well, no, it's not scissors that I needed, it was a tapestry needle. I didn't pack a tapestry needle. So what I ended up doing, and you'll see it's quite a neat graft, is I decided to just opt, I don't know what possessed me to do this, but usually I do a Kitchener stitch bind off, but instead I did a 3 needle bind off, except I didn't even have a third needle. So I used the 2 needles I had. This was my first pair of socks ever on a long circular needle, which I have attached to another whip, but I have my long circular needle. This is part of the rest of the video, I don't want to give you the spoiler. So I only have these 2 needle points. So I used those 2 needle points and the end prong of a fork as my third needle to bind this off. So I think I have some very scrappy footage, but I don't think this was something, I'm going to do just sort of in dire circumstances. I might incorporate it into future socks because I really think the grafting of the 2 sides is quite neat. Until I start knitting toe-up socks, which I said I would never do, but every time I say I won't do something, I end up doing it at some point and then I don't go back. So never say never is true. But I just thought it was quite funny. And when I got to the other sock, I did the same thing. So not my 3 needle bind off, my needle fork bind off worked out really neatly. This is from Mrs. Peacock Yarns. This colorway is called Autumn in April, which I think was quite fitting. In Australia, we're just heading into spring, so we were sort of, it's still cool enough for me to wear a cardigan. I'm actually wearing the April cardigan by Petite Knit. It's now quite a bit big on me, but it still fits nicely, and I love this tomato colorway. This yarn is from Lincraft, which is slowly becoming a discontinued store here in Australia. It's a little scratchy, the yarn, but it's nice and robust, which is great. But yeah, love this colorway, love the yarn, it's very soft, love the pattern. I'm really happy I opted for the ribbing, and overall happy with it. This is my most recent, no, I have another cast off actually. Please hold. Okay, I'm back. All right, I actually have a second pair of socks that I have cast off, which was a long time in the making. This year, Louis and Lola, they're a dye studio in Tasmania. I forget where in Tasmania, but Karina, I think is the dyer, Karina Moore. She has a beautiful eye for color as well. And when I say that, it's not to say other dyers don't, it's just that they're in my color house. They love to capture that deep jewel sort of rich tones, which I tend to gravitate towards. This year she started a Feather and Flock series where she dyes yarn every month based on chicken breeds. And I've previously heard of sort of makeup artists talking about looking at feathers and chickens to get inspired for, you know, eyeshadow and things like that. But the January sock set was very quickly purchased from me when she released it, and I did make a pair of socks for a friend of mine out of that. So the sock set was a main skein and 2 mini skeins every month, and I believe the breed for January was Belvedere, but I'm not sure. So you'll see a pair of socks similar to this on my grid already, but with what remained, I knit from this main color a giant sock tube, and then this is just giving me all the Gryffindor vibes. You can see sometimes my Sri Lankan accent slips through, but I really like that detail. So I love to hate an afterthought heel toe cuff. I always tell myself I won't do it, and then I get a giant sock skein and I'm like itching to, you know, get rid of it. I have enough yarn to go around for the rest of my life. I don't need any leftovers, so a sock tube takes care of that. If I knit anklet socks, to be honest, I could have gotten 3 pairs out of that 100 grams, but I was able to get a very generous pairs, this pair and the pair that I knit my friend, so they're both identical. I haven't gone funky. Well, unwoven ends, as I've said before, is none of your business. It's none of my business. It's nobody's business. Don't worry about it. Let's just pretend that I've woven in these ends. But yeah, happy to have those off the needles as well. This was long lingering on my needles and just sort of lying around, annoying me every time I looked at it, because I so love these colors, this sort of deep mustard and this sort of brick rusty reds. So yeah, that's gorgeous. Love an afterthought heel eventually after I knit it. When I have to stare at a sock tube and think about cutting into it, I don't love it. But as I've said before, an afterthought heel is super handy because for longevity and for wear and tear, because you are already knitting it into a tube that you've cut. If this heel wears out, you can actually unpick these stitches that you've picked up and knit a whole new heel, and it would look pretty seamless. So happy with that. So I actually have 2 finished objects. Well done me. Okay. So we drove to Adelaide. For those of you that, I'll try to include some footage of the Nullarbor. I think we're so lucky to be living in Australia. We're so lucky to have in our country so many different terrains, and that road trip kind of took us through a lot of it. So the Nullarbor is a plain. It comes from null arbor, meaning no trees. So sometimes you're driving down stretches of just like plain nothing above the height of a bush, basically. And it's just like literally a straight stretch of road at one point, but it was just fabulous, you know, like the road signs are suddenly showing or asking you to look out for camels, you know, and kangaroos, and there are posters saying, oh, look out for, I really don't like snakes, so there are lots of that, and we were really scared that we would encounter a lot of wildlife that wanted to cross the road. We have a big danger of that in Australia, where kangaroos just seem to want to jump in front of your car, but we actually saw none, and it might have been the time of year as well. That part of Australia is known to get quite hot. It's quite unforgiving terrain, but we did it towards the end of winter, and it was just lovely. It was, you know, you're literally on the edge of Australia looking out into nothing, and next stop Antarctica. So it was just fabulous. I'll insert some photos, and if it's something that, if an opportunity comes your way to do it, I can't encourage you enough to go for it. And please feel free to message me. I can give you details of everywhere we stayed, all the roadhouses and inns. If you aren't adventurous like me and, you know, not confident camping, etc., I'm more than happy to provide those details. Anyway, that concludes all my finished objects. I just thought I would take you through my current whips that are taking up my time. One has taken up months and months of my knitting calendar. It is very much, I think it's generous even to say half done, but it has become quite a popular pattern. But you'll find there are very few projects on Ravelry than you'd expect, and that's because it is a 4-ply design or fingering weight design. This is the cat knit pullover. let me just get my short row right. I don't know which one's the front. And I'm knitting this as a commission for someone who's now become a lovely friend. This is a design by Andrea Rangel, and she released this maybe in March of this year, but you can see why it captured the hearts of many online. I am knitting it. This has only had a lick of steam for the moment, so it's not properly blocked, so you can see the increases after the neckline, etc. But I'm knitting this out of Bendigo Woolen Mills. The main color is 4-ply in their luxury range, in the colorway Stone. And this is a 70-row fingering weight of 4-ply colorwork chart. So you can imagine how long that took. And I really did not want to also be hyper aware of color dominance, etc., especially because I wasn't making this for myself. So I opted, or I was speaking to the person that was the receiver of this knit, and was sort of looking at the color palettes they were after, and I think they were quite happy with the sample that Andrea has when she was promoting it. So we opted for a charcoal contrast color. My trick here is that the main color is in 4-ply and the contrast color is in 5-ply. And I remember going to dinner with a knitting friend, and she said, oh my gosh, your cats are gonna look like they're in bold and italics, and they kind of do, but I kind of like how they pop out a little bit out of the design, and I think on a yoke it will look lovely. I'm very proud of this, but I am knitting it because of my very loose combo knitting gauge. Oh, don't want to lose a stitch, which I have. I'll fix that later. I'm knitting this on 2.25mm chagus, so in some ways it's excusable as to why it's taking me this long to knit it up, but in other ways also, a lot of life happens in between. I have a very understanding receiver, but my aim with showing this to you is to hopefully hold myself accountable. I want to be done with this by the end of September. I don't know. Let's hope. Okay, I'm about this much under the arms. Let's see. The sleeves will be its own thing, but at least I'll be able to see quick progression. The fabric that it's created, the Bendigo Woolen Mills luxury 4-ply, is beautiful. This is my second garment knit out of the Bendigo luxury 4-ply, and it feels really lush. One thing that this design has encouraged me to want to learn is ladder back jacquard, I think, instead of the stranded color work where you're carrying the float just sort of horizontally. I'd like to learn how to sort of web it behind the stitches and carry it upwards. I think that is really helpful when you have a light main color and a dark contrast color so that it doesn't quite peek through. This is done pretty well. I just wonder if, when it stretches, if that would affect the fabric. But no, still happy with this. It is a lot of work. I think I'll have to take a break from commissions a little bit, but we'll see after we're done with this. Every time I knit something strenuous in 4-ply, I almost always have a sock going anyway for appointments, public transport, airports, etc. But I like to also carry at least one 8-ply-ish project. 8-ply is my happy place on a 3.75mm needle, and this is also a kind of a long-standing whip. I'm having a case of yarn vomit. Let's pretend it's not there. I'm managing so far. And this is the Midland cardigan by Penrose Knits by Laura Penrose. And this caught my eye from her vlogs, because A, it's garter. I don't not have one garter thing in my wardrobe, and that is the Vertices Unite shawl by Stephen West. The other thing is that this cardigan is knit sideways, so it's knit from shoulder to shoulder, and then you have the option of knitting the sleeves in the round, or you can knit the sleeves flush and then seam it. I was really put off by the thought of seaming, but I really shouldn't have been, because knitting garter in the round is not it. It's not the vibe, as the kids say these days. I wish I knit this flat. I'd have it done so much faster, knitting every row flat and seaming. I really love the details that she's incorporated to sort of stabilize the garter garment, because garter can be quite heavy and super stretchy. She has this sort of faux seam across the shoulder's edge, which carries on to the sleeve as well. I haven't done the neatest job, but I'm quite happy with it. As you know, I'm not fussy. I just want to enjoy the craft. I'm not looking to perfect anything. She does give you two options to seam the sides. One is a sewn bind off and the other is kind of a knitted bind off. I misread the instructions and ended up doing both. So both of these sides are also sisters and not twins. But that's fine. I relate to the concept of having a sister. So I'm happy with that. I'm knitting this in Bendigo Woolen Mills 8-ply, classic 8-ply in the color Guava. And it's been a really good year for me for green knits. I feel like I look like Christmas already, but yeah, really love that color. I don't have the recommended amount of yarn. I'm just hoping that by knitting it shorter, because I am vertically challenged, I have a very short torso, that it will work to my advantage. Please pray to the knitting gods for me. Okay. And then the next whip is actually part of the acquisition portion of this video. So after we left Perth, we drove all the way across to Adelaide. In Adelaide, I walked into Yarn Trader. And I loved Yarn Trader. It was really warm and cozy. We didn't have a lot of time. Parking is a little scarce around there. So if you are driving in, we found a half-hour parking space, which was actually good because it limited the amount of time I can spend in store. And I think they do have some fiber. Might be mistaken. They might have some Ashford fiber. But as I mentioned, I think earlier, they carry a lot of international yarn and Australian yarn, but of course I was only interested in the Australian part of it for the most part. And the first thing that I picked up, that I knew I was going to pick up because I knew I was time poor, I kind of went online and did a little sort of sleuthing to see what I would walk away with. I came out with this gobstopper ball from Cola Girl, from the Cola Girl collective. She is an Adelaide-based dyer, I believe. Yes, and this is her Drover sock fingering. It is 75% non-mulesed, superwash Aussie Merino, and 25% nylon. So there are 400 meters to this 100-gram ball, and it's to be hand washed. And this one is called Samuel. I believe it's named after her son, but I'm not sure. Really happy with that. You know, I love a self-striping. Nothing gets me knitting a sock faster than a ball of self-striping. I'm really pleased that I'm starting to dabble in something more than a plain stockinette sock for self-striping, but if you have other ideas on funky things you can do with self-striping yarn for a sock, I'd be keen to hear about it, because, you know, eventually I'm going to want to try something different. Eventually, not yet. And then I went in for a skein of Circus Tonic in her new Fate sock fingering collection. So this is something I think that she made exclusively for Yarn Trader, or it's in collaboration with Yarn Trader. And I went in for the Chatra's sort of like loud neon highlighter yellow color. I had previously knit a pair of anklet socks with John Arbin Odd Midod in his Exmoor sock base. I'm actually staring at a skein, let me get it. Here we are. I knitted in this, and the color I was looking for in the Circus Tonic Handmade was kind of similar. This is a 50-gram skein, which I thought was not enough for a sock at the time, so I ended up buying a second skein that's just lingering. So I actually have this up for sale. If you are local to me, it should be on Facebook Marketplace. If you're in Australia, it should be visible. So if you want that, let me know or DM me. I'm selling it for just slightly lower than retail. If you want, I can ship that to you, unless it's picked up by someone on Facebook before that. But I walked out with something completely different. So this, oh, it's not picking up at all. This hurt to look at in the car. It was sort of this loud sort of fuchsia screaming at me, and you can kind of see some variegation in that. It's quite unusual for me, this color, but it's called Carmen, and I think I posted something on my stories like, gosh, what the hell was in your dye pots? And she said blood, sweat and tears or something like that. But it's named after her mother-in-law. I thought that was gorgeous because I picked it up with mine. But I'm really excited to incorporate this. I'll post a photo. I'll pop a picture up here on something to capture the true color of this. But really happy with that. I don't know if this is going to make it to my MCAL this year. I feel like it's really Stephen West coded, but I don't know. I wouldn't mind it with the red to kind of tone down. I wonder if it's because I'm wearing the red. Can you catch it now? Yeah, a bit better. It's just like hot Barbie fuchsia. I like that. Okay, anyway, I've got to disrobe. And then as I entered, sort of as part of the display, there was this brand that I'd been meaning to try forever. This whole podcast, vodcast, whatever, is all about Australian fibre and treasuring what we have on this giant piece of floating rock that we are on. And I have only recently learned about Nomad yarns. Nomad yarns is an example of sort of South Australian goodness. So this yarn is grown in South Australia. It is milled in Victoria, and then it is naturally hand dyed with plants in South Australia by the owners of the farm. And this is 100% Polworth, I believe. And it is, I can't find it. This was produced on a regenerative family farm in South Australia. But if you get the chance, I might actually pop a link to their about page on the description bar, in the description bar. And I encourage you to go read about their story, because it is no easy feat producing 100% Australian fibre that is milled and scoured in Australia as well. As you may have heard if you are in the know, in Australia, one of the biggest sort of scouring mills was E.P. Robinson in Victoria, and they closed down in late July or early August. They're not completely disappearing. They are relocating, or rather the people are moving over to a mill in South Australia. So it's possible that future Nomad Farm yarns might be 100% South Australian, but don't quote me on that. I'm just sort of, I'm just guessing. But really happy with that. And I had to pick up 2 skeins. So I have, this one is Golden Wattle number 5 at the top, and here I have Golden Wattle number 1. So these are naturally dyed. I'm expecting some variation in the skein. I didn't pick this up with anything in mind. I had an idea to do kind of a Sophie scarf or shawl where I do sort of half in each, kind of a long thing, which would be cool, but I'm open to other ideas. I could do a little hood that is the two tones. It's quite mellow. I think if I did do color work with it, they will kind of sink into each other, and I don't think there's enough contrast here, but it is really soft. I think it's softer than merino. I'm pretty sure it's Polworth. I'll have to double check that. I'm not sure. Anyway, that concludes the Australian yarn portion of my haul. I think last year knit the Duke a pair of socks, and that's the first thing I've ever knit the Duke. So I no longer believe in, maybe I still believe in the sweater curse, not really, but I don't believe in the knitting curse. And it was from the West Yorkshire Spinners signature 4-ply series, and that was in the Mallard colorway, I believe. It's a self-striping that they have, and kind of like a printed yarn. But I've been chasing for the Robin colorway for a long time. You can tell this is a well-traveled skein. She's a little battered and bruised. But I picked up the Robin. I love these. It really matches this. But yeah, it's called Robin 941. 4-ply. It's 75% wool, 25% nylon. I think I really do like that ratio. It works for me on 2.5mm needles, although here it says 3.25mm needles. Wow, anyway, as a recommended. I really love this. It's working up a treat. So that is my current whip. So one of the things that came out of my autumn and April socks from Mrs. Peacock Yarns is actually a potential conversion to knitting socks on a long, as using magic loop. That's working a treat. With the way the heel is constructed in Albina's pattern, it really goes well together. You can knit this on double pointed needles or on short circulars. I often knit it in short circulars until I get to the heel, pop the heel onto double pointed needles or this sort of magic loop, and then hop back onto my 9-inch circulars through the foot and back onto double pointed needles, or this for the grafting. At the end, lots of options. I do encourage you to try. If one method doesn't work for you, don't completely give up on socks. They're such a lovely thing to have. They're so small and compact. It's a lot of fun. So I've already actually finished one sock. Let me grab that. I have finished one sock, and you can tell I really liked my 3x1 rib. Don't worry about it. It's not done yet. Don't worry about that end. Let's pretend she doesn't exist. But you can tell I liked it, but I am still lazy. So instead of doing the full leg in 3x1 rib, I've opted to just do the front in 3x1 rib, and it's worked up a treat. Again, I really love how this pattern takes self-striping yarn and doesn't make it obvious that I've used the same yarn for, like, you can't really tell that the pattern is disrupted, the striping frequency, because of the heel. That's really quite neat. And that's the little heel. Pretty cool. So yeah, I've done one sock. I think I have kind of smallish feet, so I find it pretty hilarious every time I see a normal foot and just how long it is. It feels a bit clowny, but yeah, that's one done. Not to brag, that looks pretty good. That grafting. This was not a needle fork bind off, it was just a Kitchener stitch. And the second sock will hopefully match. With self-striping, because I cast on with so much enthusiasm and not a lot of thought, the striping frequency doesn't always match up for me, but I'm hoping I can use up most of this ball of yarn because these are larger men's socks. Anyway, that's me rambling. I just wanted to start something. I just wanted to sit down and ramble because it's a lot for me to get out, a lot for me to do. I was panicking because I've been away for so long on whether I could even remember to spin anymore, and I started something yesterday, and you know, it was harder than I'd like it to be, but I'm hoping the muscle memory will kick right in. I was such a fool for not taking a Turkish spindle with me or something like that, and just sort of squirreling it away in my check-in baggage. But that's it from me, really. It's nice to be back. It's nice to be doing things with my hands again after a bit of a hiatus, and I hope to diarise and share it with you as I go along. So I'll pop in a bit of footage and a few, maybe a little slideshow of the Great Australian Bight. I can't, it was truly the trip of a lifetime, and I recommend it to anyone that can do it. And I think you can do it across a myriad of budgets, so it is sort of flexible and friendly to in that aspect. Yeah, we're so lucky to be living here, and in light of recent disruptions to who we are as a country here and who makes up the Australian population, I just want to say that this space is safe for everyone, and everyone is welcome in this space, and I ask that you treat each other in your day-to-day lives and in the comments with a lot of respect and sort of gratitude. I think it's only together that we can make it a better space. So I'll see you next time. I'll be back with more spinning content, potentially some other crafting endeavors. But yeah, I'll hopefully see you next week.